Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Have the Lakers moved on to a new way of team building that will serve them better in the long term? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcast. It's always going to be free and never locked behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to hang out with over 20,000, getting near 21,000 subscribers to the channel. Been really active and helpful in terms of answering questions and polls and all kinds of stuff. We're going to wrap some of the input we got around winning time into today's episode. And that was a question we put out there. Of course, winning time not picked up for a third season, much to the disappointment of many Lakers fans. Didn't get to the topic about intriguing teams in the Western Conference that I want to talk about that I did for TV last week. But let's start here, Andy. We did all of Monday's show, right? About Jarred Vanderbilt, basically.
Yeah.
A little more reaction to that. And one of the things that we kind of didn't get to that I think is sort of important is not just what Vanderbilt like literally does for the team. Couple interesting comments about whether or not the Lakers overpaid, underpaid, whether that contract will look cheap or expensive in a couple of years. And we got into a lot of the nuances of that. But the part that I thought was really interesting was the fact that they gave him the extension as quickly as they did at a number that, you know, you could argue that if the Lakers waited, they might not have had to pay as much. Maybe they might have had to pay more, but maybe not. But they went ahead and did it. And whereas for the first last 5 years, it seems like everything has been built around flexibility in cap space, always open cap space, always preserving a year out, 2 years out, whatever it might be. The Lakers seem to have moved much more into a mode where they are far less concerned about empty cap space and are instead populating the roster with flexible, appealing contracts and players. I'm interested how you think that serves them long term, even relative to the strategy they've had in terms of flexibility, in terms of agility, the ability to improve the team.
Well, I mean, to begin, I think it gives them a better team immediately. Now you know what you have. And when you're dealing with LeBron entering his 21st season, 39 years old, a zillion miles on the odometer, you don't really have the luxury of, figuring out what you may have down the road or, kicking the can down the road even a little bit mid-season. The Lakers had the potential optionality of bringing back Mo Bamba, bringing back Malik Beasley, really just to have them as potential contracts to move. Just to have them as expiring. They could have been operating as a team above the cap, like certain flexibilities that would have come from there. I like what they did better, which is basically we are going to perhaps cut down on a certain amount of flexibility that would come in expiring contracts, but we're going to give ourselves a better team now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, again, really important, especially when you take into account where LeBron is. The other thing, though, when you mentioned how this used to be defined, their flexibility purely in how quickly can you create cap space? Can you create cap space to bring in that star? And this was something, by the way, that wasn't exclusive to Rob Pelinka. This was something that Jim Buss and Mitch Kupchak used to do all the time, and frankly, something that used to drive me nuts when they were doing it.
Right, the idea that you do not acquire players, you do not sign guys. If you have a date, if you have, you line up all of your contracts so everybody is off the books in 2 years, 1 year, whatever it might be, and that's how you organize. That's sort of the organizing principle of your roster building.
Right. And you're never truly building teams as much as you are situating yourself for something better.
Right.
And beyond the fact that I think the way the new CBA is laid out, I don't think that strategy works as well. And you can see it by the way teams around the league just aren't valuing potential cap space the way they used to. But also, and this was a trap that I thought both Jim and Mitch used to fall into, and I think Rob Pelinka used to fall into for a while. When you value that type of flexibility so much, like it's the thing that you're always coveting, it actually creates inflexibility in the way you can go about building teams. You actually cut off a lot of options because you're so obsessed with preserving future cap space that may bring you the players that you're looking for, but it may not. Mm-hmm. And then in the meantime, there were opportunity costs along the way in terms of the guys that you could have put around your stars in that moment that maybe aren't as shiny or big name, but could have provided more help than just the stopgap guys that are always on 1, maybe 2-year deals. So I just like this better. This was something I complained about again with Mitch and Jim 10 years ago, much less Rob Pelinka 2 years ago.
It's one of those deals where, like, what always bugged me is, and just sort of keeping it in the Pelinka era, is it shows like whether intentionally or not. And I think the motivation behind that. So when we say, players, all what we're talking about is the big star, that you're going to go out and sign in free agency that year. Carmelo Anthony is a free agent. LaMarcus Aldridge, LaMarcus is a free agent. It's Kyrie Irving. It's whoever it might be. So it reflects the obvious star bleeper mentality that the Lakers have always had. It reflects at a time, for a long time, the idea of like, you just stack your team with stars and you figure it out later. That seems to be shifting in a way that I find interesting, and actually will become relevant in our next conversation here about Western Conference teams that we find intriguing. But it shows an incredible lack of creativity. Sometimes I always felt like the Lakers felt obligated to sort of behave that way, where because it's what you're supposed to do. You're the Lakers. You're always supposed to make yourself central to that. We're going to get the next star guy. We're going to recruit the next star. Except that guy's, if they're going to come anyway, and if they really want to get here, you can make these things happen. And so the lack of creativity is really what bugged me, because like you say, Andy, you lock yourself into one way of doing things, and it's almost as if you don't have the faith that you could make options B or C work if you needed to.
Well, it's also too, it reflects often a lack of imagination. It reflects in some respects an unwillingness to kind of do the work that comes with the job. Like, a lot of the, finer details and things like that. And, one of the things that I've been very happy about with, the last 9 to 12 months with Rob Pelinka is he's looking much more like a details guy. And, when it comes to building an entire roster from top to bottom, those details matter. And it just, again, if you value cap flexibility so much that you're willing to push aside all other options because you really you're that concerned about next offseason, the cap space, it becomes inflexible. Like, in a lot of ways, you are just as inflexible with your options than if you had a bunch of guys under contract for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. So this part of it, there's one more thing I want to say about this, and we'll get to these Western Conference teams here, that I think is really important, because this strategy, though, only works if you can accomplish, the way the Lakers are doing it, if you can actually kind of accomplish a very specific and important thing. And I think the Lakers have, and I'll explain next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by FanDuel, and you can celebrate this NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and you get $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed. And you can use those bonus bets on spreads, on player props, over-unders, futures, all sorts of different options. And all customers who bet, again, just $5, you get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And right now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app, really easy to use, great user experience, all these different options right at your fingertips, makes it really, really fun. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
So, get to this other list and some of your comments about waiting time before the end of the show. But the strategy the Lakers are doing, which is not, building out a team. Granted, LeBron, you don't know the future there, but other than LeBron, the core of this team is pretty well locked in for the next 2 or 3 seasons. I guess D'Lo is a question mark there, but I still don't buy the idea that he's just automatically out the door. You got a lot of players on this team that are committed contractually for a few years. And I love it. I love the way this is. I think this is the kind of flexibility that actually does play really well in the modern NBA, where you can have your cake, a good team, and eat it too. Trade guys if you need to. You have components or whatever. It requires a couple things. You have to have you have to have contracts that are across the board, which they do. They've got guys at the $10 million level, 12, 16, 17, all the way up to your max players. But you also have to sign good players and young players, and avoid albatross type contracts where you have to throw in stuff if you want to make that deal work. The Lakers, whether you're talking about Rui Hachimura or Jarred Vanderbilt or certainly Austin Reeves with that contract, and where they're set up, like, they don't have to do that. Gabe Vincent is not a contract that is going to be problematic to trade. Like, they've got appealing players under good contracts that are young, that are talented, that have established themselves in the NBA. So they've really managed to check all the boxes for both current competitiveness and future flexibility in ways that they just seemed unwilling to try a few years back. But it doesn't work if you pick the wrong players. So
they
deserve credit for that.
Well, it also doesn't work if guys like Hachimura and Reeves and Gabe Vincent, who are seemingly, at least in their time with the Lakers this past season, or in the case of Gabe Vincent, his playoff showing in Miami, that they're on the upswing and they continue that growth. Because if, say, Hachimura reverts to some of what we saw with the Wizards, or Gabe Vincent, that shot doesn't hold from the playoffs, I agree with you that they're not onerous contracts. Like, they're not, you don't look at those and be like, oh my God, that is an untradeable deal. But they wouldn't necessarily have a ton of value.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
look, you're right. Guys have to play to expectations. And
right.
I've been taking a lot of flack this summer for not being as instantly and committedly sold on how Hachimura is going to perform relative to that deal. But I still think it's a reasonable.
It is a reasonable deal, but it's reasonable. The idea of it being reasonable is in conjunction with he takes what he did with the Lakers and builds on it. I'm very confident that is what Rui is going to do, because I think he fits extremely well with this team, with their stars. We've talked about before, would Rui play as well as he did with the Lakers on every other team in the league? I don't know. I also don't care.
Right.
Like, what matters to me is how he plays with the Lakers. If his next team was the Bulls and he was bad there, well, that's Chicago's problem. That's not my problem. Right. As somebody who covers and roots for the Lakers, I don't care. But I don't.
No,
other than Rui.
Nor should you.
Right. Other than Rui seems like a really, high quality guy. I'd like to see
that is a
nice
locked on Bulls problem, not a locked on Lakers problem.
Exactly. But Reeves and Vincent and Rui, and I would even include D'Lo in this, and eventually when the extension kicks in, Vanderbilt. They all need to play at a certain level and to keep improving, or at the very least, no regression.
Right.
Because then otherwise, like I said, the contracts don't become albatrosses, but they don't necessarily have a ton of value. And you probably get to a place where you do have to include picks. You do have to include
that's fair. That's
sweetener.
They've made, we don't know, but they've made quality bets that don't that come with about as low of risk as you can.
No argument.
In this environment.
No argument.
And so I think that is it's noteworthy, and Vanderbilt represents, in addition to be just kind of an intriguing player as a type, both as literally and kind of figuratively, how you project him out for 3 years. Like we talked about on Monday, he also represents, I think, the last move of the summer in a real shift for how the Lakers operate that I will serve them well. So last week, Andy, I did Spectrum Sportsnet. I know you're going to be on this week for people who are in LA. Tune in Thursday night to watch Andy on television. And so we do their studio shows. We're in there a couple times a month each. And I was asked a question, which NBA teams do I find most intriguing after sort of playing out through the summer? I stuck to the West because that's just kind of where my interest is. But I wanted to kind of get your reaction to my top 5. They're not super in order until you get to number 1. So I went Nuggets at 5, Thunder at 4, Grizzlies at 3, Warriors at 2, and I'll hold on to the 1 here for a second. Any of those teams to you, whether you're talking, again, Nuggets, I said Nuggets, Thunder, Grizzlies, Warriors as like the first 4 that I mentioned. Among those, were there any that pop out to you as like, okay, yeah, that's a team I'm kind of intrigued by as well?
OKC and the Grizzlies, with OKC number 1, because I was thinking about this truly in what I consider the most literal definition of intriguing. And OKC is a team that seems like they are moving in the right direction. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looks like an MVP level player. And depending on how ready Chet Holmgren is to play a full NBA slate and play at the level that the Thunder thought he was at when they took him, it was 2nd overall, correct?
If something like that.
The Thunder, to me, feel like they could be the Grizzlies of a couple years ago, where they take a leap where it's like, oh, crap, like this team is ready. Like they are actually ready to do some damage. They were already in the second half of last year a tough out, and, they ultimately didn't make the playoffs, but they were a team that if they had had maybe another 3 weeks of the season, they might have been able to play their way out of the play-in altogether. So they were my number 1, and I really like the Thunder are a really well-run organization. They've been that way since their inception. I remember covering the Thunder during that 2010 series against the Lakers. I actually went to OKC and we were working at ESPN at the time. I got assigned the Thunder as my team. So I spent a lot of time around them and super impressed. And I remember Kobe after that series, which the Lakers won in 6, Kobe being like, it's good that we're beating these guys now because
I was at that game 6.
Yeah.
And it was,
and then, Memphis,
clearly like that was a tight series.
Yeah. Memphis, both seeing how they're going to play without Ja and then seeing how Ja gets reintegrated back into the mix and sort of his future with the team is really intriguing. And then another one I had, not even necessarily because I consider them high in the playoff mix or anything, but just they're intriguing. Like what's going to happen with them is the Wolves, because if it's not working, I don't know what they do, because they're not going to trade Anthony Edwards. I don't think they can trade Gobert.
Right, because they gave all the stuff you'd need to trade Gobert, they gave up to get Gobert.
Right, and then you start getting into, do you want to move Karl Anthony Towns? Like, you may have to move him, but I don't know if the shine is still on him the way it used to be, even though he's obviously a really good player. So I find them intriguing.
Yeah. Let's take a break and then let's come back, because I think the Thunder is such a great answer, and I'm right there with you on Memphis, because the contrast between those two teams. And then I want to talk about my number 1, and we'll do the winning time stuff after. So we'll do that next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Jace Medical. And if the last few years with the pandemic, various natural disasters, other unforeseen emergencies have taught us anything, it's that you got to expect the unexpected. Everyone should be empowered to take care of themselves and their loved ones when it feels like the world's gone sideways. And that's why Jace Medical offers the Jace case. Jace case offers 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use, gives you peace of mind so that you're not just hoping you have access to medication during an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have that medication in hand. Jace Medical's simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation, really easy. I've done it, to licensed pharmacy medication delivery, to ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. And you can save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off using the code Locked On at the checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com, promo code Locked On.
So OKC, I think I've mentioned this a couple times. Our friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook have OKC at plus 8,500 to win a title this year. And I don't think that's going to happen, but I would absolutely put $100 on the Thunder at 85-1 before I would put $100 on Minnesota at 80-1, the Hawks at 75-1, the Knicks at 55-1, the Pelicans at 47-1, the Mavericks at 24-1. I just feel like, if you're looking for a team that can make that leap, it's the Thunder. And then, like you said, the Memphis comparison is great because I don't know what the Grizzlies are. Like, what does Ja look like when he comes back? Is he the same dude? Because he's immensely talented, and now he's got a guy like Marcus Smart next to him, which I think will be very beneficial. Nobody, I think, had their reputation damaged more by the World Cup than Jaren Jackson Jr. Nobody on that team. And so what does that look like when he comes back? And so it's like, that's still a really good team that I think is being written off because Ja's going to miss time and all that stuff, but it shouldn't be. And I think they're really well coached. I didn't put the Lakers in on my list. I could have, but I didn't. And I was asked about that. I'm curious if you agree. I am obviously really excited about this season, but in terms of like that intrigue, that like, what are we looking at here kind of thing, I actually feel like the Lakers are pretty straightforward. Like, we saw it in the playoffs last year. I think I kind of know what this team's going to look like. And if they stay healthy, I think they're going to be very good. So I left them off my list for that reason, in the sense that I think I have a pretty good feel for what they are, as good as you can in mid-September for any team that hasn't actually played yet.
Yeah, the biggest amount of intrigue with the Lakers, I guess, is can LeBron and AD stay healthy? And just does LeBron at some point this season reach that place where his body stops cooperating? Because 21 seasons, 39 years old.
Exactly.
Like, even LeBron starts becoming human by NBA player standards. But I agree with you. And insofar as how do the pieces fit, what does it look like? I think we have a really good idea. The new guys that matter, Gabe Vincent, Taurean Prince, Christian Wood, even with the questions that surround Christian Wood, it is not difficult to imagine what it looks like. And all 3 of those guys have been in the NBA long enough with prominent enough roles that you know who they are as players.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. The Lakers, I think, are really exciting. Intriguing is not the word.
Right. It's a different word. And so, and it's funny, like I put the Suns at number 1, and it's in part because a lot of variance between what this could be. The high end of what the Suns is terrifying, for a lot of teams. But I also think they're intriguing because in a time where people seem to be doing more what like the Lakers are doing. Stars matter. You got to have the right ones, and you have them, you keep them. But team building, continuity, all this stuff. The Suns are doing it the old way, of a few seasons ago. It's like, no, we're going to assemble the Avengers and duct tape together the rest of a roster and see what happens. And I just think that's kind of interesting. I'm intrigued by this experiment.
The comparison I've made is, their new owner, Matt Ishbia, who clearly likes to, announce his presence and, kind of be the swinging manhood in the room, so to speak. Like, he reminds me a lot. You know how all those steakhouses in Texas where it's like a 72-ounce ribeye,
Right.
and if you eat the thing in under an hour, you get it for free. Matt Ishbia to me feels like the guy. That's the meal he orders every single night. Like, he orders that 7 nights a week, and it doesn't matter if he can't finish it because he can afford it.
Right.
But
Exactly.
like, this is how Matt Ishbia eats. Like, every night is a 72-ounce steak.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing some. If you're interested in media, for example, like how local teams, like, they're doing some really interesting stuff. Like, he is a big thinker. There's no question, and he's taking some big swings there. They are doing it differently there at a time where the league seems to be shifting, and it could work out really well, or it could be a disaster. Even though I think they had a pretty good offseason given what they had to work with.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention Winning Time, because I know I will confess, I watched a couple episodes last year when we were sort of trying to figure out, or season 1, we were trying to sort of like just content, like, something to talk about. And then I stopped. And I don't know if you're like me with TV, Andy, but like, once you start a show, if you don't get through it, I have a lot of trouble picking it back up. And so season 2, haven't seen an episode, but I know a lot of people, you included, have been following it closely and are disappointed by the cancellation.
Yeah, I mean, it's in part because we know Jeff Pearlman, the author of the books that, Winning Time has been based on, and there have been hopes that, his books, because he's written a lot about the Lakers, including the Kobe Shaq years, could be the blueprint for other seasons of Winning Time. Jeff's a friend of the show. We both have a lot of respect for him. And, there've been we've learned that there are a few people who work on Winning Time who are aware of us and fans of us. So we've heard from them. So, it's disappointing to see, that take place. It's funny. I was watching the final episode, which ends with the Lakers losing in the 1984 finals, Game 7 to Boston. And, it's a game we all know how it turns out because it happened almost 40 years ago. But
spoiler alert.
Okay, but down the stretch of this game, like I'm watching this scene, and the Lakers have mounted this furious comeback, like in the last 5 minutes of this Game 7. And people remember this, this became part of what, created the tragic Johnson headlines. But Magic turns the ball over. It ends up going to Dennis Johnson, who streaking down court on a breakaway. Michael Cooper swoops in for a block, and he gets called for a foul. And I get mad as I'm watching this. Like, I'm like, that is BS, even though it's a reenactment of a game that happened nearly 40 years ago, not the actual game. And B, it's also a reenactment that, if I'm being honest, of a game that I've never actually seen, much less every memory of. Like, I don't actually know whether
because you were like 9 years old and living in St. Louis when this game happened.
I don't know if like Coop actually had a clean block or not. I just know I'm watching the Lakers trying to win a title, and it pisses me off that it feels like it's being taken from them.
Yeah.
Like the show, one of the things I really enjoyed about the casting was just incredible. Like, the actors top to bottom were so good. Like, there's the big names, but like how they managed to find Quincy Isaiah, who played Magic, who'd basically done nothing to this point. Like, if you look at his IMDb page,
right,
it's a couple credits and that's it. Like, he nails not just Magic's mannerisms and voice, but like the swag, the charisma, but still can convey insecurities Magic has. How they found Solomon Hughes, who had quite literally done nothing to that point. This guy who could be convincingly Kareem. Sean Patrick Small, who plays Larry Bird, like another guy whose resume is mostly like shorts and stuff like that. He's incredible. Like, he makes Bird's cockiness, but also like this darkness inside him, feel real. Devon Nixon is incredible playing his dad, Norm. Hadley Robinson's really good as Jeannie. And I thought season 2 got better as it went along. Like, season 1, I think, struck some people as more purely entertaining, like at its heights, but I thought it had more lows. I thought it often felt wild and outrageous, like for the sake of it. Or like,
yeah, I didn't love the first couple episodes. I'm not
like, if you got them mad enough, then it must be great because they don't like it.
Right.
And I felt like I didn't like how it was constantly breaking the fourth wall, which is something I like Adam McKay, but I think he does it too much. I thought some of the inaccuracies were unnecessary. But season 2, I thought, just settled into storytelling. And I thought it was really good. And again, sorry to see it go, but we asked the question on the YouTube page, the community section, what eras or seasons would you like to have seen if this kept going? Read some of the responses from people. From Ty Johnson 3111, definitely up to Magic's retirement. Need to see the shift in power from Cap to Magic. Also, one more episode for that Magic return, and then a Kobe Shaq sighting from our buddy Marcel, I believe in the Netherlands. I love this show, and there's so much that could have been dramatized. At least 2 more seasons, few Kobe Shaq years. Also curious about the 2011 playoff run. This is going to be fun season, Kobe's farewell tour.
That would have been interesting.
2020. From David Togawa 6172. I would have liked to seen Pat Riley guaranteed the back-to-back all the way through the Shaq Kobe three-peat era. Another from Ursula Major 2000, wanting to see Magic's retirement and the comeback in the All-Star game. I thought about this, and it's funny. Like, I think for most people, Brian, like the obvious answer is going to be Kobe Shaq. That's actually probably my lowest on my list for a couple reasons. First of all, it's just been covered so heavily. Right. But also, I think like the odds of finding 2 unknown actors who can nail Kobe and Shaq as well as Quincy Isaiah and Solomon Hughes did, like, never say never. But
Shaq's a tough cast. Like, it's a tough one. And I think guys who can play Shaq, like, just physically can play Shaq, aren't just like walking up and down Hollywood Boulevard.
And Kobe, especially too, because the memories of him are more recent.
Yep.
I think that's a really, really tough casting call. The 2 eras that pop to mind for me, I would love to see in between Magic's retirement, because you get more of Quincy Isaiah, he's so good on this show. Magic's retirement up to the offseason where you are drafting Kobe and trading for Shaq. But you see like that period where the Lakers are thrown into turmoil because of Magic's unexpected retirement. You also get his attempted comeback and the coaching and all that stuff. But like seeing the Lakers in this period they're not used to, which is not winning, but also you get like the Eddie Jones, Nick Van Exel, Vlade. The other part I think would have been really fascinating is Kobe's post-Kobe retirement up to Anthony Davis's arrival. Because then you really start getting into the bus sibling dynamic. You get the turmoil of Magic taking over the organization, which means more Quincy Isaiah, age him up, add a few pounds, but he can be Magic. Plus, after all the jokes and all the memes, Rob Lowe gets to play Rob Pelinka.
I agree with you. And I will say this, though. I was thinking obviously about Kobe as well. And I don't need to see more Shaq Kobe. But I do think that it would have been a really interesting challenge to play Kobe, because the memories now are sort of softening Kobe, like the last 3 or 4 years of his career where he was different. It was just a different guy. And then obviously post-career. And then when he really softened up a little bit in terms of, just sort of the letting people see the person. And then obviously, his death. But like Kobe in 2000 and pick a year, really different dude. Like, and like the covering, like playing that character in a way that perhaps accurately reflects, kind of both what people thought about him and it would have been an interesting challenge. So I agree with you from an era's standpoint. It's one of the least interesting to me. But from a casting and writing and acting standpoint, just that role would have been really a tough one. All right, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to hang out and with subscribers and talk to us, talk to them, leave us questions, leave us comments. We got a really good guest lined up for later this week. We'll, fingers crossed that it doesn't fall through. If it does, I think we'll be able to get him back. But that is planned for Thursday. We're looking at. So yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. But I just want to kind of tease that, Andy. Professional work there on the podcast. I will see everybody tomorrow.